Hello, hello. This is part two of us interviewing my father, Arben Malaj, as someone who has seen some super exciting high visibility negotiations during his journey as a prominent politician in Albania. Let's get to it.
The second, which I like to share with you, is about the respect for yourself. No one can mistreat you without your permission. And I will start from this. When in March 1997, we didn't have any international organization in Albania, any foreign embassy. After 1 month, the team from World Bank came in Albania, and they invited me to visit them in the headquarters in Albania, not in my office. They didn't mention why not, but my idea is that they had been very sensitive about spying.
Basically, up until March of 1997, there were no foreign entities in Albania, no embassies, nothing because of communism and then all the turmoil and all that. Then, April 1997, the World Bank comes into Albania. They set up a headquarters. My dad at this point is Minister of Finance, and they wanted to meet with my dad, but instead of them going to his office, they invite him to their office. And my dad suspects that it's because communism was very controlling and they had a lot of spies, a lot of tapping, hidden recordings, spying, and things like that.
You were secretly monitored.
Yeah, you were secretly monitored at all times. My dad suspects that the World Bank invited him to their offices for more confidentiality and privacy.
Very concerned if president can record it.
They didn't want the president to have access to their conversations with my dad.
Yeah. And when I met them in their office, the chief of this mission was a lady from Germany, and she immediately started to mention me. Do you know how risky is your situation in Albania? Are you aware about what is your job? Are you ready to do this? And I was upset.
The head of World Bank was like, do you realize what you've gotten yourself into? And my dad was offended. But I also, as I'm in my mid 30s, and I'm thinking now, he was 31 or something.
36.
Oh, at that point you were 36. I imagine the head of the World Bank in Albania was like, this kid is the minister of finance of this entire country that is in a big mess. Can he handle it?
I told it, please, I know what is my responsibility. I love my country. I can do everything necessary to go out of this crisis as soon as possible. And for this reason, you are not treating me as I'm married, and I can go out of this conversation. If I'll be Minister of Finance, I'm governor of my country to World Bank, and my responsibility was higher than different ministers. And in this context, if you don't respect me, I'm not ready to negotiate with you. The main negotiation was to discuss concrete steps necessary to start immediately and start to discuss about a new strategy for Albania in the front of what happened after the pyramid schemes.
Okay, so the World Bank invited my dad because they were going to together agree on the next steps on how to handle the situation. And again, this is a lot of turmoil. The pyramid schemes had just collapsed. The country was in extreme civil unrest. But first, they invite him to their office instead of going to his office. So, there's a little bit of these almost power plays, but also sort of manners or logistics that need to be factored into the negotiation. But at that point, my dad was like, okay, maybe they're worried that someone's bugging my office. Okay, I'll go to their office. That's number one. And then when he goes there, the head of the World Bank is like, do you know what's going on? Do you realize how bad it is? And my dad is like, yeah, I do. And I care a lot about my country. I'll do anything I can to help my country come out of it. So they did not start on the right foot, it sounds like. So then how did the negotiations go from there?
I was about to leave this meeting. Another member of this team was former Minister of Finance of Hungary, who did good reforms, and he was working for the World Bank in Washington. And he told me, please, Arben, we mentioned this kind of top priorities because, based on my experience, if you are doing what you promised now, for sure you are not survive more than 18 months as a Minister of Finance, because all reforms have a social cost. You will be in the front of headlines, many accusations, attack, and you can resist more than 18 months, which happened.
So the former minister of finance of Hungary was in the room during these negotiations between my dad and the World Bank. And he's like, hey, what you are saying you're going to do, what you're committed to doing, will have some social costs because, cleaning up Ponzi schemes, obviously you'll be attacked a lot by different players. And he said, you will be attacked, you'll be in headlines, and you will not last more than 18 months. And that's actually what happened. Were they proposing something else?
No, we just test each other. I stay very clear in my integrity and my responsibilities. And after close cooperation, they created very positive perception. And this investment to integrity and to respect for yourself helped me to facilitate negotiation with concrete programs.
So one thing I'm not clear about, you go to the meeting with the World Bank. What are you disagreeing on?
First, before to negotiate, the first moment is to create perception for partners. They are not going to respect you if they are arrogant because they came from the international finance institution. This is not the best option for them because my commitments depend on my respect, my integrity, and my responsibility. If you are not going to respect me, you create delays. You can impose some reforms which are not concrete for Albania economy.
What's happening in this negotiation is the World Bank comes in and they think we're coming in and we're going to tell this young minister to do what we want him to do and what we've seen work in other countries. And my dad is like, this is not a one size fits all, and I need to be respected here. I am representing my country through the Ministry of Finance. It sounds like their mistake thinking about what we talk about negotiations is like you need to be very professional, cordial, kind, and really respect the other party. And it sounds like they came in being like, do what we tell you. And my dad is like, you're in my country, we need to collaborate, you can't just tell me what to do, because ultimately it's him who would make the decision and execute them.
The second example is that I negotiated with the EU institution to provide food for the Albanian people. I was surprised by European bureaucrats. One of them mentioned me, don't worry about food. We can give you food from the plane.
Oh, like airdrops.
Yeah, airdrops. And we can solve the food crisis in Albania. And I told them, no, I don't like this kind of option because this kind of option create many opportunities for corruption because without accounting, without the responsibility you just share. I don't like your option. You can bring the foods in my country and we can organize the process to sell the foods. And from this kind of revenue, we can finance social program for poor people and programs which open work for people in those areas. Was an easy debate because they imposed this in many countries.
The EU Commission now wants to support Albania with food because Albania was a very poor country. What year was it when a politician said we only have 18 months of food left?
It wasn't just 18 months. Prime Minister in 1992 mentioned in a meeting we don't have enough resources for more than 5 days.
5 days?
5 days. And the people in 1997 was afraid we'll be in the same situation and they tried to get any kind of food.
Basically, Albania has always been very poor. It's getting better now. But in 1992, it was so bad that the prime minister said, we only have enough resources for 5 days. The country will not have food after 5 days. No more food. People will not eat after 5 days. It was that poor in 1992. So now in 1997, people were afraid that things will be so bad as in 1992. So they were going into food storage and kind of taking it. So now the EU Commission meets with my dad in 1997 and is like, hey, we're gonna throw food from the air, like airdrop food. Don't worry about the food. They meant we'll just bring food into the country. Don't worry about it. My dad is like, no. And I'm very proud of you for this because it's so easy to be like, sure, bring food. But my dad said, no, this is not good for the country. You can bring food and we embed it into the system in such a way where We try to sell it, and then the revenue from it can be used to create social programs for the poorer parts to reduce poverty, unemployment, and all that. You don't just bring us free food, but let's embed it into the system in such a way that the revenue can be used for social programs. I think this is very far-sighted of you, because this has been one of the things the West has been criticized in how they handle Africa, where they bring free stuff, or Asia, the poor countries, where they bring resources, but then it kind of ruins the local economy. And I'm very impressed that my dad thought about this such a long time ago. And his concern was corruption as well, and how to make it more sustainable for the country.
This is great. One thing I'm curious about, Arben, is Albania was going through a lot of unrest. There was a lot of turmoil in the country, and these foreign organizations like the EU Commission, World Bank were coming in. It seems like these foreign organizations have a lot of cards because they can bring resources, they can bring financing to the country. So you would think that they have more leverage than you. How do you think about your leverage and retaining your power in a negotiation when it seems like the other side is holding a lot of the cards?
Yeah, because I have only one solution to find the best option to go out of the crisis situation. One goal. And if I do only what they say, I'll be just a bureaucrat, not minister of my country. I remember that the negotiation with IMF had been very difficult, and lots of reforms, especially in how to close the budget deficit, because inflation in 1997 was about 64%. Devaluation of Albania with dollar was very high. Before the crisis was about $1 100 lakh. In the middle of this crisis was $1 about 180 lakhs.
For people who are not very deep in economics, my dad is saying inflation was 60%. For context, the normal inflation in the US nowadays is 3% a year. 60% is insane.
Budget deficit was about 10% and public debt about 80%. But the cost of borrow money was very high. It is a very critical element, because to get money, we pay about 46% interest, and only 54 lakh go to spend in budget through expenditure or investors. And we discussed with IMF. It was very difficult until 4 o'clock a.m. They have some strict proposal. I have my proposal. One was I asked them to apply special tax for public security to increase in double level the wages, because without public order was it possible to get reforms or to improve other elements of your life. Everything starts from public order. They won't agree. They told me, we understand you, but it's not a good tax policy. And I said, okay, I know it's not good tax policy in normality, but not in the countries which are in a less situation. I like to mention negotiation with IMF have been very difficult, but they are very aggressive with a strict position before you achieve agreements. They are flexible if you have some ideas, but when you sign agreements, they don't tolerate any elements. IMF have authority as a doctor of a country. The World Bank is to give money to implement the standard reforms, and other donors are to provide the financial resources for this kind of priorities. Every institution I visited in 1997 and discussed about the situation in Albania, they told me, Minister, if you don't have agreement with IMF, we'll give money for humanitarian issues, but not for development of your country. In this context, there's a responsibility to negotiate with IMF is very critical. This kind of discussion with them create a perception about my integrity and my professionalism. And the support of IMF after the first cooperation was a real benefit for other negotiations of my country.
What he's saying is that the negotiations with the IMF which is the International Monetary Fund. They were very tough negotiations. But what I'm understanding is they're open to you proposing different things from what they're coming up with. They're very strong negotiators. However, once you land on an agreement, they ask you to stick to it and you should not deviate from it. I want to come back to Alex's question. You were negotiating with World Bank, IMF, very big players. What gave you the confidence and what leverage did you think you have when you're a mid-30s guy, not much support, small country, you have big players coming to negotiate with you? What is your leverage?
Yeah, three elements. The first, I love my country. Second, I have very high professional skills. The third, very high integrity. For them, that was enough to realize you are a very good partner and to respect you. I remember in October 1998, we organized together a World Bank in Brussels, the donors conference, and all donors mentioned any kind of help for Albania, all kind of material helps. And I saw there how useful was support from IMF.
I think what you're saying is if you have IMF support, a lot of donors are happy to help you.
The first, without this support, it's not possible to be successful. The IMF team, very nice experts, mentioned that we believe in the Albanian government, we believe in their strategy to recover economy, we believe in their programs to go out of the pyramid schemes, and for this reason, we are asking you to support Albania. Another example negotiation was with donors, how to close the pyramid schemes.
Who are the donors?
Donors are, for example, Italy, Germany, Greece, and countries. And second, international finance institution, IMF, World Bank, EBRD, European Investment Bank, and other banks.
Donors are other countries that are powerful in the region and more globally, as well as financial institutions such as the World Bank, IMF, and all that.
We had a debate about administration of pyramid schemes.
There was an internal debate within the Albanian government on how to manage the Ponzi schemes. So the Albanian government in 1997, together with the donors, chose Deloitte, the consulting firm, to come into Albania and help with the Ponzi schemes. And my dad is saying that the concern, though, within the Albanian government is that if Deloitte mismanages this, it still falls on the Albanian government to clean up the mess. They're coming into our country to help, but we need to ensure that it's working. Okay, so where is the negotiation in all this?
Negotiation in this moment was between me and donors because we didn't know how long take Deloitte to clean up Ponzi scheme. My argument was we need to have third party audit Deloitte. Deloitte doesn't prefer this because the other company will be the competition and was PwC. Donors mentioned that we don't have money to pay them. And I said I can sign any agreement if we don't find solution how to audit Deloitte.
So you were putting into question Deloitte's capabilities.
No, it's not about Deloitte. It's about for people who lose the money in pyramid schemes. Accountability.
So why didn't you just trust Deloitte to do? Why did you need someone else to audit Deloitte, which is already an auditing company?
Yeah, because people don't believe Albanian experts.
I was wondering why my dad was not having enough faith in Deloitte to handle the Ponzi scheme. But my dad is saying that if there weren't another third party that is more neutral, the people of Albania would start wondering if my dad just colluded with Deloitte and sort of getting corrupted and all that. So he's like, I will not sign a deal with Deloitte unless there's a third party auditing the process so that everyone has full accountability and clarity what's actually happening. But the donors, which again is World Bank, IMF, and all that, they were like, we don't have money to pay for a third party to now audit Deloitte's process. And my dad made it non negotiable. I need someone to audit this process for transparency.
Yeah, and after my strict position for that, they discuss and they offer solution to finance the third party which will audit Deloitte. And this was necessary also because in the first stage of my career as a Minister of Finance, I separate responsibilities as a Minister of Finance and responsibilities for the transparency of pyramid schemes. For the second, we created a special group from the parliament. They choose experts to be responsible for any element of process
of the Ponzi scheme. So I'm wondering, did you want PwC just for your own clean reputation?
No, no, no.
But what was the point of that?
Don't forget that if you are public figure, you have two profiles, individual and public. Doesn't matter how far you are in the leadership of your country, no one care about the profile of you as an individual. They scrutinize everything as a public. And I didn't do that to save my country, but to serve my country with high responsibility.
So my dad wanted a third party, which ended up being PwC, to audit Deloitte so that the country would have transparency and would have full clarity on what happened to the Ponzi scheme's money, where did it go, and all that. So it's not just for him to be like, hey, I'm not corrupt, I'm not colluding with Deloitte or whatever, but it's so that people knew exactly what happened, where the money went, and all that.
The theme that I'm getting is when you're in a position when the other side seems to have a lot of leverage, how do you build your leverage? Well, it comes to your credibility. And in your negotiations, you did a lot of things where not just you showed credibility, but you created systems like getting PwC to come into the picture to make it absolutely clear that your credibility could not be questioned. One thing about blockchain where it's trustless systems where you don't depend on trust, but then you remove the element of people needing to depend on trust because the system is such that everyone is already auditing each other.
My former president of Albania, Professor Gerta, mentioned that the integrity of politics came from the integrity of politicians. For this reason, is very important to not forget that in any kind of negotiation or during your public mandates.
What I really like about this is that even though at face value my dad did not have much leverage in these negotiations, again, imagine big institutions like World Bank, IMF coming into a tiny country. Albania at the time was probably 2 million people, and he is a young minister of finance with not much support coming from a random village. What he anchored in himself, not anchor in the sense of negotiation 101, but in himself coming into these rooms, he's like, personal integrity, putting my country first, those two values guided him. And I'm not going to be intimidated by these big players. And spoiler alert, what I know about how this goes is that they were like, what is this guy doing with all these non-negotiables against us? But then he proved himself, and then he earned their support going forward, where they're like, okay, he knows what he's doing, he sticks to his word, he has integrity, and we're going to support him to get even more things done later down the road. So we will leave all that for part 2, which is coming in the summer, and we'll do that one at a cute studio here in Albania. I think it's time to wrap it up here. Any final thoughts?
I just want to say thank you, Arben, so much for sharing about your background. And I think both Gerta and I learned more about you. This was a very special treat for us.
I'd like to add something. The knowledges are a public good. We have obligation to share them with everyone and to share free. In this context, you can share my email and my mobile with your friends. And for free, I'll share any kind of experience or any kind of mentorship, especially for young people who are ambitious to serve their countries.
Wow, that is very, very generous. Thank you so much. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. And we will see you on the next episode of Gentle Power.